What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to go through the trades that we took today inside the Discord, as well as the game plan going into tomorrow. So today, really solid day. The morning was pretty slow. We ended up catching a trade right after lunchtime. So I'm going to go over what we did in a second here, but going into today, this is what we looked like. So on the 30-minute chart, we actually ended up flipping bullish, which really wasn't a surprise, because if we go back to the put side, we had a little bit of bear trend last week, and this is what the higher time frames ended up looking like. So I told you guys that this was a pretty bullish chart because the bears were losing the trend here, and 10 SMA is crossing below the 50. And when that happens, a lot of the time we see a move in the opposite direction of the premium, and that's exactly what happened. We got to move higher. 30-minute chart ended up crossing for the bulls today, and we just trended up the entire day. And then also the other time frames here, that 1 hour chart was crossing negative. Same thing with the 2 hour chart, crossing negative. That 10 SMA is crossing below the 50, and all those things kind of combined with all those time frames going negative. And then the 30-minute chart crossing today, there was no reason to be short biased. I had no interest in taking shorts, and again, this is why the system's great. I knew the bears were done because that 30-minute chart wasn't crossed anymore and it was going negative. So my focus was back on the bulls, because we end up crossing here on the 30-minute chart today on the call side. So that tells me, like I said, to be only focused on the longs in the market. So today, when we pull up the 0DC chart, this is what we looked like off of open for these contracts. You can see we end up opening right here off of open, reclaim the 10 and the 50. I always wait for the first 25-30 minutes before taking any trades, and there was no entry to take on this move higher. There was no really good entry. The chart was already crossed off of open. Pretty much what you had to wait for was a reclaim of the 10 SMA, and this is what we took in the afternoon. So we ended up getting this little pullback here. We pulled back, and I took my entry on this candle right here. And the reason I didn't take any other reclaim like this chart back in here, not this chart, this candle back in here, reclaim the 10, but we're so far from the 50 SMA. I wanted to see, for these reclaims, I want to see price to pull back really close to the 50, or come decently close to it for me to play the reclaim. This is nowhere near it, so we ended up pulling back a little bit. And this is pretty close right here. We got to 260. These are like 230. That's close enough for me. Reclaim the 10 right here, but 50 SMA is still trending down, so I never took an entry yet. I didn't like it. And then we got this dump right here, and it got back above the 10. This is where I took my entry, went long at like 1240, 1245. I think I went long during that candle sometime. But yeah, we went long there. You can see what happened. We just held that 10 SMA the entire way up, and we saw it move higher. I ended up getting, I think, around 48 points on NQ, right around that 50-point mark. So I ended up taking some trims, and then I held some runners up until I think this point right here, and then I closed the rest on this pullback to the 10 SMA. I saw we were starting to reject, so I just got out. I just closed it for the rest. I think close to maybe 35 points of profit. So it wasn't the craziest move. Volatility did pull back a bit today, so obviously we're not getting those 80, 100-point swings like we were last week, which kind of sucks. I wish volatility would remain high, but it dipped below, I think, like 19. I think it was in the 18s today, maybe even 17. I'm not sure. I don't really know what VIX was at in the afternoon, but I know it did pull back a bit. But yeah, that's pretty much all that you could have taken today. That was the only entry that I saw. There was nothing else to take. There wasn't really anything else. There was nothing else to take. I mean, this move up here, nothing to take. Only trade opportunity was this reclaim right here. That was valid. I mean, the entry back in here didn't really like. 10 SMA was down a bit, but we got our entry right there, got the move higher, and that was that. That's all we did today for SPY. Wasn't anything crazy. Just took our nice and easy long trade and called it a day at that for SPY. And yeah, I mean, it's a pretty simple day. 30-minute chart told me that bulls were favored, so I just looked for my long entry, got the 10 SMA reclaim to go long, and that was the trade we took, and we caught a winner. So going into tomorrow, I mean, 30-minute chart is still crossed here, so still bullish market going into tomorrow. We are at some resistance here on the 2 hour. It has sloped down a little bit, nothing too crazy. But if I had to guess, eventually we're gonna end up breaking above it. And then we have this 4 hour 50 above here, which I'm not really too concerned about. I mean, you can see how flat it is. It's not really much of a resistance. If you guys know, the flatter this 50 is, the less of a resistance it will be, and the more likely it will get broken through. And we already tested it back in here, so if we come back up to it, I'd imagine it's going to break, and we're just going to end up ripping higher. But we're going to have to see how price action goes the next day or two. But for now, I'm bullish as long as this 10 SMA is above the 50. And price remains above the 50. If this 50 SMA is a little weird right now, it's sloped down, so who knows, maybe we do get a drop. I'm not sure, but as of right now, I'm just going to be focused on the longs. If we get a big drop tomorrow, then obviously this chart will go negative, and most likely a put cross would be on the table. Like I always say, there's a trade for both sides of the market. If it wants to dump and cross negative, we'll end up playing a short after we lose the key support and cross negative on the 30-minute. If we remain crossed, then my focus is still going to be on the long side, and I'm only going to be looking for trades to the upside. So both directions, I don't really care where we go, but I definitely favor the bulls slightly. Again, 30 minutes chart is crossed, and also this is like a bigger picture outlook on the market. The monthly chart here on the daily time frame, we keep holding this 50. Every single drop we've been getting, the 50 SMA has been marking the bottom. So this chart's pretty bullish. The weeklies are bullish, so my overall bias is to the upside, but obviously I'm going to play what I see and go from there. So yeah, that's all we did today for SPY. We did play in individual stock, which was BABA. I'm going to drag the chart over here. It's actually ripping into the close here, which is nice, but let me drag this over so you can see it. But this is just a regular stock play. This is how I trade regular stocks. I don't really use the system for it. I just been liking this for swings mainly, and it's pretty simple. You can see BABA here. We kind of are forming this little wedge, or this little trend line right here. You don't even need to draw it. You can kind of just see it. And we also, it's kind of like a base too as well. You can see right here, we have this little area of resistance. We started to break above it today on Friday. I used Friday's high for my entry. So pretty much all I did was recognize that. We ended up breaking Friday's high right here. We got a nice, green candle above it, went long, and grabbed some calls for a few weeks out, or yeah, 2 weeks out. I think the 7th expiration I have. So yeah, we're just trending higher. We're up about 55% on that swing, and yeah, I'm just riding the rest, break even. And I already took a trim for 50%. Half of my positions out. Only got the other half remaining, and we're gonna get break even on it, or I'm gonna end up closing it when we get maybe around like 176 to 177 in that area. I'll probably look to close it, but yeah, for now we already trimmed half. It was a good trade. All I did, it's simple, like I said, break of that Friday day high, and I was in. I mean, there's nothing too crazy about it. And like I said, you could also kind of see that little base that was forming right here. We broke above it, as well as with Friday's high, so that's why we ended up taking that trade, and that was a good one. So that's what we did for BABA. And then I'm also in another swing, which I'm not going to go over yet because the trade is still playing out. But I took 2 swing entries today. One was on BABA, one was on something else. Both really good setups. And yeah, we're just going to see how they play out, and see if we can find any setups going into tomorrow. Now that the market's back bullish, I'm kind of going to be looking for more setups to play for individual names. When the market was bearish, it was a lot harder to catch trades and a lot harder to find setups because we know that SPY is overall bearish. So really wouldn't make sense to be throwing a lot of longs on the table when we know the market is in a bearish trend. And I think that's kind of going to be the rule of thumb that I follow. When the market is trending bearish on the 30-minute for SPY, I'm not going to be taking any of these breakout trades, and I'm only going to be taking them when the market's neutral or bullish. That's probably the best way to go about it and have the biggest edge of the market when that 30-minute chart is not against us, kind of on the bigger picture. So yeah, that's what we did today. If you guys enjoyed, drop a sub. If you guys want to learn, join the Discord down below. That's where I'm at all day, every day. And that's where I posted the trades for the day. I posted BABA, posted SPY, and I post my other swing that I'm in. So yeah, that's all I got. I'm out. Peace.